measurable things in the IEP, how can you track the progress? And the baseline is your present level. So when you look at each area and domain to which there is a need in, glad to have you back, Dad. You have that need, you gotta have that very clear present levels. And when we look at mastery levels that are on your IEP, how many know what mastery levels? Show of hands. Anybody? Okay, mastery level is how many times you're going to do it to show that you've mastered the goal. So if my goal was to safely cross the street without being struck by a car, what would the mastery level be? What percent? 100%, absolutely. So that is the mastery. So we look at goals that need to be measurable and achievable. So therefore, if they're achievable, I would want at least 80% mastery level, 8 out of 10. And what that means is if I can show that the child does it 8 out of 10 times consistently, the goal is mastered. Okay, so that's the 8 out of 10. 4 out of 10 trials is 80%. And 2 out of 5 is not good. That's only 40. So we take a look at those present levels of academic performance. Every time in an IEP meeting, somebody says the word he needs. Do you know what that means to me? What does it mean to you? Let's write a goal. Because IEPs are written based on the needs of the child. So if you're telling my child needs it, let's write a goal. He needs to sit still. Let's write a goal. He needs to. Let's write a goal. So it's based on those needs that we write the goals. The present levels are the baseline. Here's where we are now. We know that IEPs are written for the period of a year. So if we're here now, the goal is going to be 1 year from now. So this is our baseline. We have to report on that progress of the child. And when we have a goal, that's when you get all those accommodations, modifications, and the related services. When the effects of the child's exceptionality is on your IEP, what that says is that it's your child's disability. Can anybody in here cure disability? Would there be a line from this building to somewhere in northern Canada if you could do it? And my kid would be the first one in line. So if you can't teach disability, you make an accommodation or a modification, because that is the child's disability. So therefore you can't do that. A real easy example of that is children with autism that have really high sensory issues. So if you put them in a crowded hallway, what's going to happen? It's going to trigger behaviors. So you'll never be able to teach that. We assume that you can't because of the sensory issues unless you get those under control. So you're going to make an accommodation. And what that accommodation would be was that you would let the child transfer the hallway to the next class 5 minutes early, or 5 minutes later when the hallways are cleared out. So that's a very simple example of an accommodation that would be needed.
I have a question.
Yes.
About the goals.
Okay.
When you write a goal for your student, then let's say he has an accommodation with that goal, like a one-on-one instruction.
Okay.
How do you, if the teacher, if let's say the ESC teacher is saying, well, little Johnny, this means you have to take 1 and add 5, so now you have 6. So now he's getting everything right. He makes honor roll because he has that one-on-one. How do we know that the data is true to what he can do on his own?
Okay. In the goal that you just stated, originally the goal was with assistance. Ultimately the goal would be about independently. So what you were saying in the form of a goal should have been a benchmark. The goal should have been independently, and the benchmark, or present level, is with assistance. He's currently doing it. And then we want to move him up to be starting to do it more independently. So the independence is the goal. With assistance is actually a present level.
Okay.
So right now he's doing it with it hand over hand, or with a physical or verbal prompt. He's currently able to do this. That's present level. That's where he is. Independently is where we want to be. So therefore, the goal would be independently present level right now. So you always go back, and an IEP is never finished. It's always a living document. It's continuing. And it should be on your refrigerator, because as parents, you should be monitoring that progress and seeing that I'm heading toward the end of that goal. And because we have to report on that progress, and let's just go ahead and flip through, we're just going to leave this kind of a background here. And as we're reporting that progress as often as a non-disabled peer, so at least every 8 weeks, you should be getting a progress report on each of the goals on your child's IEP. Now, what I want to see is I want to see when it comes up 8 weeks, and I want to look at that goal, and my baseline in the beginning was 10%. I don't want to see a report that says that it's not achieved or we haven't mastered it. I want mastery level. I want to know if we were at 10% in the beginning, where are we now? Are we at 20% or at 25 or 30? Because if we're 10 at the beginning of the year and we want 80 at the end of the year, I don't want to come up at the end of the year to find out I'm at 15. You should be able to find that by tracking that progress, your child's goals through the criteria and the data that's written in your IEP, how we're going to report on that progress. And you should be able to know within the first 8 weeks if I'm halfway there, if I'm a third of the way there. Because if I come up in 8 weeks and my original baseline was 10%, and 8 weeks I'm at 15%, am I going to hit 80 by the end of the year? Am I? No. So I'm going to ask to reconvene that IEP, or maybe a teacher conference to begin with. We always start with the teacher. You're always going to start by having that communication with the teacher, but then you go back to the formal process if you need to, and making an IEP request. There's no limit to the amount, the frequency of IEP meetings, the length of them, to be able to develop it. So you can always request that IEP meeting. If you're refusing an IEP meeting and a reasonable request, then you got this other procedural safeguard over here called written notice that you can request as to why you're denying that. We're tracking that progress to make sure that I'm going to hit that mastery level of 80% at the end of the year. I want to know that percentage of mastery level, and I want to see the concrete data to which you made that determination. And if you look at your child's IEP, you're going to see these things like, under that evaluation criteria, things like student demonstration, teacher-given tests, teacher observation, whatever that may be. I want to see that. Where did you get the data that shows me work samples that they're able to do that they're doing it 5 out of 10 times, 6 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times. Because that is what we do as parents. We identify needs, and every time we say need, what does that mean? Goal. And I want to see the data that shows me I'm making the progress. And I've said this before, and now I'm saying it on film. I don't care if it's the bus driver teaching my child, as long as you can show me that the child is making measurable progress toward the goal by providing me with the data. Okay? Let's flip on. This is actually in the law. You can look these things up. You can go and read IDEA and the statutes that are up here on the screen. In your bags,
can we ask for a copy of that data? Is that our legal right? Though?
Absolutely.
Like, can
absolutely.
I have a copy of that?
Under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, you have a right to have a copy of anything that's personally identifiable about you and your child. That's under your right to records. So you ask for that nicely. Be sweet. Bring cookies. I love to bring cookies to IEPs. It's not personal. Have another cookie. And just do business. So in writing, you ask, I'd like to see the data. Look at your IEP. Look at that evaluation criteria there and what that is. And then ask for that data. Because we just don't want to pull these things out of the air, and that can happen. It can, yes, absolutely. Not that it would ever happen in my county. Maybe yours. But anyway, it's just business, and we go through that. And then when we look at these are your domains on the IEP. Let's think about when we write this IEP, the IEP has to include everything from the time your